So we have three doubts here, and I'll cover those in today's discussion. So first one is views in Spark. So let me try explaining that. So we will go to Databricks community. I'll log into my Databricks community account. Let me go see cluster. Cluster is down. Delete that cluster and create a new one. So while cluster is running, I have prepared one notebook for today's discussion. Okay, so the topic that we want to discuss today is views in Apache Spark. So this is very common question and common thing that people ask in different interviews and different discussions, that what is view in Spark? Does Spark support view? Or if it does, what kind of views are there? That's the first question. Your answer will be yes, Spark supports view. And we have three types of view supported by Spark. One is your standard view, which is similar to database views. The second one is your temporary view. And third one is your global temporary. Once you answer this, the second question immediately comes is what is difference between these three? So we will try to understand difference between these three and with this example, with an example. So to understand that, we need a data frame. So I've copied some code from the previous lessons. You should be already familiar with this code. So what I'm doing is I'm importing SQL functions, because I'll be using some of the SQL functions in this code. Then I'm reading a Spark data frame, same example that we used in earlier, firecalls CSV file. I'm inferring a schema, header is true and format is CSV. So we will read this and create this data frame. Then we are renaming many of the columns, removing these spaces and renaming them to a proper column name. And finally, what we are doing is we are fixing the data type for some of the columns. For example, for call date, for watch date, we are converting them to date. And for available date time, we are converting it to timestamp, and delay is a number. So we are just rounding it to 2 digits. So delay is, so you have already done all this in the previous lessons. This example is picked up from the earlier lesson. So finally, I'll display the data frame. Why I'm doing this? Because I need a data frame to discuss three types of views. So let me run this. I'll attach the cluster. Hopefully it is started. It's still running. So maybe we'll have to wait for a minute or so. So what I did, I defined a data frame. Data frame name is FireDF. And then I created a table using the FireDF data frame. The table name is FireDF TBL1. I have two things now. One is my data frame, another one is my table. If you come to data tab, you will be able to see that table here. So when table is visible here, it means it is persisted into the Spark metadata store. And this table is permanent. I can access it from different notebook. I can access it from even a different application. Even if I shut down my cluster and restart this cluster, this table remains there, right? Because it is permanent, it is persisted into the Spark metadata store, and it remains there as long as I'm keeping it here and I'm not dropping this table, right?
Okay. So Prashant, this is on the default database, right? Or
yes,
let's say if you would have created other database, will that still stay there?
Yes, it will still. If I create a database and then create a table in that database, it will still stay there until I drop it.
Okay. So on this example, this is writing to the default database. How do I specify to write it to a particular specific database?
Give a db name dot. It will create to that database. That's all.
Okay. Okay. And what about the sample function that you have, the method that you define?
Yeah, so sample function we will cover later. I just used
Okay.
it here. Sample function. So I'm using this data frame FireDF to create a table. This data
Right.
frame comes with 43 million records. I don't want to create a table with 43 million records, unnecessary storage. I'm just trying to test it.
Okay. Okay.
So what I'm doing is taking 1% sample of that data, and it's random sample. I could do firedf.limit 5,000, but limit 5,000 will give me first 5,000 or maybe 5,000 records from somewhere, and it all will be might be for the same year. It's not a proper mix of data. So normally for testing or for development activity, if we want to prepare some test data, we do use the sampling. So sampling is random. It will give a good mix of data to me. So what I'm doing is I did a sample, then write, format is Parquet, mode override, and table name is FireTBL1. We will learn more on these things as we progress. We haven't learned all this yet.
Yeah. Should we say Parquet table here because you're writing it as a table?
You have to say something. If you don't say, then it takes the default. And for the current version of the database for Databricks, default is Delta. So if you don't say, it will pick up the default value.
Okay, so it'll by default it'll be a delta table, and then we are just writing 1% of the data
in
as a table.
This data frame.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So now I have one data frame and one table. What I wanted to say that table is permanently persistent in the metadata. How do you check your metadata? You can use SQL commands, right? Show tables, and it will show you in the default database. This is the table name. Is this temporary? No, it is false. It is permanent. So this table will persist in your database even if you restart your cluster, or you can access this table from any other application also, because it is as long as you are connecting to same cluster, same metadata. So
Prashant, I have a question here. Can you please go a little up, scroll?
Yeah.
So this firedf.format, right? You said default is Delta, but this is our Spark API, not Databricks API. Is it correct assumption or?
Yeah, this is a Spark API.
So I mean, Spark does not know. I mean, so Delta is a proprietary of Databricks, right?
No, that Delta is not proprietary. It is open source. But yes, your question I got. If you are working on a local machine, you write this code. Default is not Delta. Default is Parquet. For Apache Spark, the default is Parquet. But for this Databricks version and runtime, if I go to the compute, look at this cluster. This cluster is Apache Spark 3.2.1, Scala 2.12, and Databricks runtime version is 10.04 LTS. So for this Databricks runtime, the default is Delta. But in a standard Apache Spark, the default is Parquet.
So this Spark is specific to Databricks, right? I mean, this version. Or so how it happens? I mean, first Databricks now they will maintain it, or it's open source right now, right? Spark. So will it go parallelly? Two versions. One is for Databricks. They will create developing their own, which will have default as Delta. Or sorry, I mean, how it happens?
So there is one version, one build separate going on for Apache Spark, where Databricks and many other companies contribute to the development of Spark. That goes in the Apache Spark build, and that's a separate version. Then Databricks will take up the latest version from Apache, add additional features, and create a new version of the Spark. They call it Databricks Spark, and include it in their offering, in the Databricks cloud.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I was saying that the table is persistent, it's permanent, right? Now, come to the view. So what I said is Spark comes with 3 types of views. One is your standard view. Like any database, if you know Oracle or Postgres or MySQL, you can create a view on top of a table. And the view is created based on a SQL query, right? So same way, you can create view in Spark also using a SQL. They have SQL syntax for that. So create maybe view if not exists, and give a view name, fire_vw, as, and then you can write your SQL, whatever you want. So my table name is this. So let me do simple select a star from this table name, and I can create a view. This worked. So this view is also permanent. It's persisted into your metadata. You can see it here. Fire VW has come here. So in a database also, your view is permanent. It's persisted forever until you drop that view. And it can be accessed from any other application, any other session, any other notebook, wherever you want to access it. It's accessible to everyone, whoever is working on the same cluster or same in the same environment. You can select from this view. You can see the data. If you want to see the metadata, you can query the metadata. How do you see metadata? Using show views. And it will show you. The view is created in default database. View name is Fire VW. Is temporary, is false. So it is a permanent view. It is persisted. You can also describe extended and see more details about the view, whatever view we created. So you can see column names, their data types, come down, it shows the name, type is view, and the view text is select star from the TBL, Fire TBL1. So your view query is also stored. And as we already know, in any database, view doesn't contain the data. It doesn't store the data. It is just a query. So when you do select star from a view, it will run this query on the table, on this table, and data comes from the table. That's a standard in any database. So the Spark view is also same like any database view in any standard database. Then if you want to access it from any other session, you can access it. I already told. So let me create a new notebook and tell you one more concept about the Spark notebooks. So there are two things in Spark. One is Spark application, and the other concept is Spark session. So when we run, when we start a cluster in Databricks community and we created this notebook, Databricks community will create one Spark application. And all that we are writing here, we are running it, it runs within the same Spark application. It's one Spark application running here at this stage. When we create a new notebook like this, when I created this new notebook starts a new Spark session, right? So within the same application, this notebook creates a different Spark session. So when you are working in Databricks community, each notebook comes with a separate Spark session. It's an independent Spark session, right?
So Prashant, just to clarify, right? So when you get into your workspace now, it's one application and every notebook is giving one session within that application.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
So since views are permanent, you can use it from other sessions also.
Can it be that one login to Databricks is equivalent to one Spark application? Is it something like that?
As of now, you can, not one login, you can mark it to workspace. One workspace is one application in the Databricks community edition. So one workspace is always one application in community edition. And each notebook is a separate session, Spark session in Databricks community.
Or using different cluster, can we count it as different application?
The problem is in Databricks community, you cannot create more than one cluster. So in Databricks community, that's why I said in Databricks community, one workspace equal to one application. But when you go to Azure Databricks, you can create multiple clusters, and one connection to one cluster becomes one application. So if you open a new notebook, connect to a different cluster, that becomes a different application altogether.
Clear.
Okay. So yeah, so what I wanted to show here is how to create a view. I showed you the data within the view. I showed you the metadata also using select views and describe extended. And I showed you describe view and access view from another session. I showed access view from another application. I couldn't show because we are working with the Databricks community. Maybe once I start using Azure Databricks, I can show you it at that time. Even in session, there is something called clear state. So even if you clear state of the session, the view doesn't go away. View still remains because it is persistent, it is permanent. The point that I wanted to communicate is Spark view is persistent, it's permanent, it's forever unless you drop it. And it is very much similar to the views in relational databases or in other databases. That's about the views. Now let's come to the temp view. So let me start with the for DF temp view and global temp view. If you go press a tab and search for create, you will see 4 functions: create global temp view and create or replace global temp view. These both are to create a global temp view. Then these 2 are create or replace temp view and create temp view. These are for creating temp views. So let me use temp view because we want to understand what is temp view first and then go to global temp views. And give a name to the temp view, and name will be, let's say, fire_tvw, right? So I created this temp view. Once I created this temp view, I can access it from SQL or from data frame, wherever I want. So for SQL, select star from this view. This shows. If I want to access it from data frame, I can use spark.table method. It says table, but it can access table and view anything. So you can access it from data frame, you can access it from Spark SQL, but it is temporary. What it means temporary is it is local to your current session, right? If you go try accessing it from different Spark session, let's try it from a different session. Table of view not found, right? So difference you understood view. Temp view is also a view, but it is not permanent. It is a temporary view. The name itself says temp view, so it is temporary view. And temp view is local to one particular Spark session. It is not visible outside the Spark session. The moment you end your session, temp view is gone. It is not.
Yeah, Sushant, one question here. Let's say in the notebook, you create multiple temporary views. Is there a way to see that, hey, these are all the temporary views that we have created? The reason why I'm asking is you may not have to end up, giving the same temporary view in the same thing.
Show views will show you.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Fire VW, Fire TVW is a temporary and it is.
And this is not associated tagged to any database. It's just temporary. Okay.
Right. It's just temporary. Because database is a persistent object, right? You cannot create temporary objects in a persistent permanent object. So it's not associated with any database. It's temporary. And you can list all the temporary views using this. You can even use describe extended on this view, and it will show you details about this. In all respect, it works like a standard view, but difference is it's a temporary view. It is associated with the session and it ends with the session. Its life ends with the session. Okay, so when I say its life ends with the session, then that means even if you clear the session state, if I clear the session state, and that temporary view is gone because I cleared the session state. I'll get the same error that I was getting in a separate session. So Spark temp view is also a view. It is created using data frame APIs, and it is temporary to your session. It's local to your session. You cannot access it from outside the session, and it dies with the session. It vanishes with the session. So I think temp view is now clear. Any doubts on the temp view?
One other silly question. So let's say, is there a command that I can initiate a new session in this notebook?
No. You can create a Spark session. When you are working in a local environment, you have to create a Spark session. Without that, you cannot do anything in your local environment. But when you are working in notebook environment, in Databricks environment, they automatically create a Spark session and give it to you. You can still write a code to create a new Spark session, but the create a Spark session is designed in a way that it will return you the same session. You cannot create two sessions in one notebook. So now we come to the global temp view. So what is global temp view and how do we create it? So let's first see how do we create it. It is also a data frame object. So you can create it using data frame, and I'll use same data frame and create or replace global temp view. And let's say we give it a name fire_GTVW, global temporary view, and run it, and it should create. So my view is global temporary view is created. How do I access my global temporary view? Is from SQL. You can try accessing it, but it won't work. I'm waiting for an error. Okay, so table of view not found, because global temp view is always tied to one namespace called global_temp. This is crucial information. So if you attach a global namespace before the view name, you will be able to see it. So how to create a global temp view, you learned that. How to use it from SQL, you learned that also. You can, maybe I'll use this cell itself. If you do show views, it won't show you anything. It won't show you the global temp. It is showing you the view, temp view, but it is not showing the global temp view, because global temp view is created in some other database in this global temp namespace. So you have to query that namespace. So this is how you can see objects within a database. So when you use show views in global temp, it will tell namespace is global temp. This is the view name, is temporary. Yes, true. It also shows you the other one, but this is how you can query the list of global temps in your session.
One question, Prashant, why it is showing the another one when it's not, I mean, a global temporary, normal temporary view?
Why it is showing this one? You
Yes,
mean, right?
yes.
I think they designed it that way. Show views in global temp means show everything which is there in this namespace, and also show me things that are not tied to any namespace.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So it is not showing you the other view, right? If you remember.
Yeah, I believe it is like, showing all the views that are available for this session.
No, not for this session, because this view is also available for this session.
Yeah, anything persistence that will be available, anything temporary to this session that will be available, anything global will also be available, right? And since you applied at the global level, I think whatever is available at the global level, it is showing up, and whatever is available at the current session, that is showing up.
Not exactly true. Whatever is available at the global level, it's showing. Whatever is available to the current session, which is not tied to any namespace, is showing. But if it is tied to some other namespace, that's not showing. It is still available to current session, but it is tied to default namespace. So that one is not showing here.
And can we assume this namespace global temp is a database, or it is black box, I mean, internal to?
Yeah, kind of database. It's not a database actually, because if you run show databases, it shows only default. It never shows global temp.
Got it.
But you can assume it works same as the database, but you cannot create anything in the global temp using the global temp namespace.
Only for view. Only for views, this global temp.
Yes, only for Spark's internal use, and they will use it. And global temp views are created in this database. So that's yes. So how they are different from the global temp view is different from the standard temp view. Global temp views are for the entire application. The scope for the global temp view is the entire application. So you can access it across sessions within the same application, because it is also a temp view. So it dies when you when your application ends, or you shut down your cluster, restart your cluster, it goes away. Your session ends, it doesn't go away because it is there. It is available across sessions. But when your application goes away, the global temp view goes away. So you want to access it from another session, it will work. That's the only difference between temp view and global temp view. Temp view is tied to one particular session. In this session, in whatever session you create it, it's available in that session only. Global temp view is tied to your application. It is available to you across all the sessions within the same application. And that's what we are seeing here. Even if you clear the state, session state, it doesn't go away because it is available to all the sessions in the same application. So if I clear the state, it is still available because it is supposed to be available to all sessions. So even it doesn't have to do anything with the session state. Even if I create a new session, new notebook, it will be available there also. Okay. So just to summarize, I think we covered all the things I wanted to cover in for Spark views. Spark views are standard views, just like any database, any relational database. It is available across the applications, across the sessions, to all the applications, as long as all those applications are using the same metadata store. And it is permanent, it is persistent. It remains in the system as long as you are not dropping that view. It's same as like relational database views. And then we have two types of temporary views. One is your standard temp views, and the other one is global temp views. Temp views are also views similar to standard views, but their life is scoped within the single session. They are available within the single session only. Then global temp views are available to you within this single application across these sessions. It depends what you want to, how you build your code and how you want to use it. If you want to create a view in one notebook and use it in another notebook, or create a view in one session and create it and use it in another session, then global temp view is the tool. You will be using global temp view. But if you don't want any other session to access your view, your work is local to the session, you will be using your temp view. I think that's all about the views. Any questions?
See you again. Keep learning and keep growing.